Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast. Today, a little different venue. We are at the Ritz Garden in Boulud Restaurant here at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Grand Prix headquarters for this year, for 2025. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette, and our guest today, the CEO and President of Tourisme Montreal, Yves Lalumière, and the General Manager of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Andrew Torriani. Thank you guys both for being here today.
Thanks.
Yves, let's start with you. Why did it take me an hour to get down Sherbrooke Street this morning? No, I'm not going to start with that.
You got to take the subway in the right
apparently.
time.
Not a good time to consider taking the subway, though. Look, you've been the head of Tourisme Montreal around 12 years, I think. You've been in this business for a long, long time. Let's just overall start with a general assessment of how you think things are going. And obviously, we're talking Grand Prix. There was a lot of concern over how well the city would respond this year, questions to whether the Grand Prix comes back. How are we doing?
That's a lot of question. I can tell you that the team has worked really, really hard over the last year. Since the end of the last Grand Prix, the team has really pulled it off. So we feel very reassured. The team of Tourisme Montreal has been part of the committee as well to overwatch the situation. And I can tell that Bell took this very, very seriously after last year's difficult Grand Prix.
You know, some people might ask, in the midst now, as we are, of a bus and metro strike, what effect this might have on Grand Prix organizers who are here and going, wait a sec, you know, it's an event one weekend a year. You think you could have averted this. What do you do in a case
I
like that?
think the Grand Prix is always like the perennial. You know, I mean, it's centered about this big event. It's the biggest event in Canada. And we take a bit the Grand Prix as an hostage and as a lever to negotiate all kinds of stuff, right? So we were able to make sure that for the Grand Prix race, there's not going to be any issue. It's supposed to be 100% functional. So that secures me. But nevertheless, you know, around the Grand Prix, there's still the Franco Folie that's happening, right? There's a lot of events in Montreal. It's very difficult for people to purchase cultural, tickets and so on if they know that they've got to go back home around 8 o'clock and there's no subway. So I'm not happy about the situation, very dissatisfied with it. And especially that tourism is such a big economic lever for the city. And so at least the Grand Prix is protected from it. And sure, we couldn't afford to have this during the Grand Prix.
To Aaron's point, though, I mean, as you have told me in the past, this is the biggest week of the year in terms of the economic spin-off. And you've talked about revenues like up to $100 million in this 1 week alone. And when you hear about like last year, for example, with the Terrace Gate, like on Peel, we just hope, everything comes together. That nobody says, well, the city is too difficult to do an event like this in.
I think, I compared it to many events outside, right? I mean, if you look at Paris, the Olympic, everybody pulls together to make sure that the events is a tremendous success. We tend to be a bit negative, slightly negative around the Grand Prix. And you're right. This is $162 million in tourism expense during, a week. People stay 4.5 days on average, which is the longest stay of any events in Canada. So we've got to better understand the economic value of it and as well what it does for the city. I mean, the same thing as the Montreal Canadiens. When they win, people are happy. If the Grand Prix is a success, then the restaurant scene is a success, and there's good vibe in Montreal.
But I will point out, obviously, Andrew, from your perspective, I mean, the Ritz's Grand Prix headquarters has been for many, many years. I think there might have been an issue a few years ago. Will people come, not come? Will we see the same numbers? From what I understand, this is going to be a record year for you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really incredible again this year. I was a bit worried in March because we saw a slightly slower booking pattern. And all of a sudden, it just, after we got through that first little bump, it just booked up right away, and I was surprised how quickly it booked. It booked in a way that we had never seen before. One of the things I also wanted to add to Yves' part there is that when you look at the number of viewers on television, we get the biggest bang for our buck in that we have over 100 million eyeballs that watch this, and sometimes up to 200 million eyeballs that watch the TV part of this. It's a worldwide event. It's the biggest event of anything, second to probably World Cup. But I mean, this is what the advantage is.
So the people you're talking about who book, and you're fully booked now, where are they coming from? Are they mainly Americans? Obviously, there are a lot of people here from Europe as well. Do you know?
We obviously know exactly where they come from because we actually prepare beforehand to tailor our arrivals. But when you look at it, it's incredibly distributed. We do get a lot of Americans now that Liberty Media has taken over, and Grand Prix has become more important in the United States. Before, it used to be mostly sort of Europeans that would come. Today, we see a real blend. You've got them coming from Asia, you've got them coming from the South America. It's really incredible to see. And, for us, we have to sort of know that because we need language, we need, not everybody speaks English.
Right.
Most people do in the F1 world, but you still need to be able to deal with this.
I'm curious if we can for a second. I don't want to just focus solely, since we have you here on Grand Prix. Tourism overall for Montreal. This was a concern. The pandemic set everything back, obviously. How are we doing now?
We're still doing very well. It's been growth after growth year. When you look at the U.S. market, had 13 or 14 consecutive months of growth just before the new administration kicked in. So now the last, the months in the winter has been a bit tougher, but now you're seeing the growth back again. But over the last 10 years, it's been growth after growth. The number of hotels have increased. The number of airlines, direct routes, has increased tremendously to 156 direct destination. That's a whole lot. So that's very close to Toronto, who's got about 200, right? So, you got the Qatar, you got the Emirates now, you've got Tokyo, daily. So the city has really bloomed in terms of direct connect. And Andrew knows that because he's been at Air Canada before. So the dependence on the airline routes is extremely high. And that's why, Andrew says, you got people from Tokyo, and you got people from Dubai, you got people from, India as well. No, we got direct links. So major difference, and that was an importance that we wanted to put in when I arrived in the CEO position. So numbers are good. Number of hotels have increased. Growth again this year in terms of the inventory of hotel rooms has grown by 4.5%. So these are good numbers. I mean, there's still other things that we can do. We could grow the convention center. We could have more strip at the airport as well, in strip. So, but it's a good momentum for the city.
Yves, you talk about, obviously during the summer we do very, very well in terms of, kicks off of the Grand Prix, you have Jazz Fest, Francophonie. Yeah. Now the Just for Laughs is coming back in a very big way this year. Oceaga, which surprisingly, not so surprising to you, has turned out to be a major, major event. I don't know about how it does for the Ritz, but...
we do fantastically with Oceaga.
Really?
You'd be surprised. The first year that we really got big in Oceaga, we totally misunderstood it. So we had low rates and everything else like this. My hotel filled, and I went, what the heck? Now everybody knows Oceaga's big, and we have a gating around how you book it.
But one of the other things, and you talk about to sustain this tourism year-round, restaurants, and I think we really got short shrift. We got not what we should have gotten from the Michelin guide. Quebec City beat us. We're way below Toronto, Vancouver, and everything else. And if you want to sustain tourism year-round, your own restaurant here, Maison Boulogne, so many others that were overlooked, by the Michelin people, and that I thought was a slap in the face.
I would say that on the Michelin scene, I was quite involved with that, and we expected more. You're absolutely correct. I was a bit disappointed with it. Now, Toronto and Vancouver has been 3 years. Michelin wanted us before we wanted them, so they were after us, and we said no because our restaurant owners were not ready at that point. The post-COVID that really took a toll on them. So we surveyed them 3 years ago, and we said no, we're not ready. And Michelin came back and said, yeah, fine, I think it's the right time.
Well, was there a difference between Quebec tourism and Montreal tourism? Quebec City's got more starred restaurants than we do.
Yeah. I know. Well, not overall aggregate, but in terms of the Michelin, the top one.
Top one, and no 2 stars here, and only.
We're about 20 below Toronto. I think we're going to catch back, but it's been 3 years in Toronto, 1 year in Montreal, so I'm very confident. Actually, Aaron, when we did not participate or wanting to participate a few years ago, both Toronto and Vancouver really acknowledged the fact that Montreal is the capital, the gastronomic capital, and people still did well. So I'm not complex over Toronto and Vancouver. I think we're going to get there, give us another year and two, and we'll be quite fine. And I think we'll be even better than those cities. But overall, getting Michelin in, and you're right, it will attract more Americans. After Americans choose destination based on gastronomy as well. So, we're number 2 behind New York in terms of numbers per square kilometer.
I don't know that you can measure this, but obviously, given what's gone on in the U.S. under a brand new administration, suddenly there's this war, if you will, tariff war between Canada and the U.S. Has that come into play at all? Do you find some Americans who buy into what Trump is selling, for example, deciding, you know what, I'm not going to go to Canada?
Yeah, we're not getting that. Like as Andrew says, we're not getting that on this side. On the other side, yeah, I think that the U.S. will get a lot less Canadians, and numbers of survey, probably maybe 50%, but things are starting to get back to normal a bit. So it may be even a little less than that. But where we're getting it a bit in a positive way is on the convention side, where people say, we're not going to go to these states, we're going to go to Canada. So at this point, early in the game, we're gaining on the number of conferences and meetings. Canadians are definitely not going to have their meetings in the U.S., while the U.S. still can do that.
I think that's a very important part because, people are concerned, the companies that are coming for conferences are concerned about the image in the administration. Individuals, what we're seeing very clearly with the individuals is they're coming in nevertheless. And we're also, as Canada, are pitching a very big campaign to say, hey, we're open. We're not interested whether you're what country you're coming from. We will receive anybody. And I think you'll see very shortly a major campaign by Destination Canada that's going to say, Canada's open for business.
I know you talk to, when people come in, sometimes you'll be there, you'll be talking to people. When you see Americans, I'm curious, have any of them come up and said, you know what, we don't care about the president or anything else. We're just happy to be here.
They apologize.
I think we have that all the time.
Yes.
I've had in the 2 years of this administration, the 2 terms of this administration, I've only heard it once, where someone got really angry because somebody said something. Other than that, I think when they reach our hotel or the city, I think they just have such a fun, enjoyable stay that it doesn't become a political.
And Andrew, one of the things we take for granted is that they don't. We have a dollar that's 70 cents, and which goes an awful long way. When we did this piece over the weekend on hotels and like how pricey it is, even during Grand Prix, and I got calls from people saying, "Are you kidding? If you went to New York now without anything going on, you'd be paying more than you would be."
U.S. prices in Miami and in New York and in San Francisco, L.A., they're so high right now that when you take both those things, currency and dollars, it's crazy how much cheaper we are.
And when you think about, you talk about Americans and the foreign exchange, but talk about the European as well, which is very strong.
Yeah.
The euro is very strong. So we think about the euro as well, because we're adding 3 destinations this summer: Edinburgh, Valencia, and I think another one. I think it's Madrid. I'm not sure, but the 3 European. So Europe is very important for Montreal. Is where the gateway to Europe, the porte d'entrée, the door to America. And we're going to touch. It's 2 million Americans coming to Montreal a year, right? And we've decided to test the foreign exchange part. So we're going to do a stretcher dollar test. In Montreal, what we position Montreal is we say Toronto is the downtown of Canada, Montreal is the playground of Canada, and therefore this year we decided to do the umbrella campaign, the playground, but we're doing a test with stretcher dollar. We're going to have the bagel that's going to be bigger, and the room, the size of the room bigger as well. So we're going to try to do this, see, because most of the Americans, 66% of the Americans don't even realize our dollar is better value.
Yeah. No, Canadians may be reluctant about going to the States, but from what I've seen and heard, Americans aren't reluctant about coming here because it's a discount. Basically, they're not looking. They're getting. They want
except for the ones that Donald Trump told are our enemy.
Yes.
Other than those,
right?
I think,
exactly.
they're coming.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the viewership, because the viewership last year increased by about 5%. So on a worldwide basis, you're talking about 330 million people watching the Grand Prix over the weekend, right? So these are extraordinary numbers. And, when you calculate that, the investment that we would make in having this, just on the TV side, it's about 45 million. So people tend to forget about the visibility that you have through the radio to TV as well, and the gain on reputation. And therefore, that's why, the race last year, we forget about the race, but the race was one of the top one in the last 10 years, right? So good for us on that scene, but everything around it needs to be improved.
Well, you kind of briefly touched on the spin-off. The race is the race, and that's the weekend, but typically, I think you said guests tend to stay 4.5 days on average. How much economic spin-off is there post-race?
On the post-race, you're talking about the reputation. Then people say, okay, this is Montreal, this is great. This is the only race that's on an island as well. So they get, good viewing of the city as well. So we don't measure it that way. What it does, though, to us, it just keeps the momentum on Europe and on the US because they see the city, they see the event, then they see the Just for That that's coming back, roaring this year, and then the other 100th festival that's taking place. So it's a momentum during the summer, and it starts with the Grand Prix, and next year it's going to start even better.
And you see the helicopters, all those shots that they do. I mean, it's always being shown.
Selling the city.
Going over the city like this, and you see this beautiful image of what we're about, which I think is really important. One thing that we shouldn't forget, though, is that during COVID, we did a study on how many people are touched by tourism. In other words, they either directly or indirectly work for tourism. 1 in 10 people in Canada work for tourism. So it has a huge economic spin-off in that part as well.
I wonder, too, unless you're going to just add something, Yves, but this whole idea, what we started with about, we're concerned, I don't know if the word is right, but, Grand Prix is a huge event for the city. You mentioned the economic, spin-off that it creates. This idea that Montreal was kind of warned, hey, you better get your act together after last year if you want to keep this going. How concerned are you by that?
Well, I was part of I met with Stefano last Grand Prix on the Sunday morning, and people were not happy about it. But I will tell you that the administration of the F1 was very positive and constructive and worked with the team to really look at all the elements, and the team has really come together. But, we've had the Grand Prix for 47 years, right? So we got one strike out of 47. Our record is still very strong, and we tend to be very negative, but when we think of the record, the pilots love Montreal as well. So, we're signed until 2031. I'm very confident that we will extend these deals very shortly. So, but we do have to have a great Grand Prix. I think we're ready for it. I can reassure you of that.
One of the recurring jokes at the Just for Last festival is that Montreal will be a great city when they finish building it. And you get a lot of negative feedback in terms of like the state of our roads downtown. They were just moving. You forget about a transit strike. Just at the best of times, it's very difficult maneuvering around.
I know you're right. I mean, it's a bit of a chaotic, environment for many years. I was with people from Toronto this weekend, and they say, Toronto, we don't move, so we don't. There's so much traffic. Montreal is less traffic, but there's a lot more construction, and the way there's too much orange cones. I got out in the press, about that. We can't be like that all the time, despite the fact that people love Montreal and the chaotic scene that we have. But when I leave Tourism Montreal, I will be one regret is that the city has been in construction all of the time. But that being said, to your question, is we do the survey all the time. We survey all the time, and people, they park their car at the hotel, and then after that they walk, they take the subway, and 95% of the people they don't drive around the city. They know better, and therefore it's not an issue as much as you're right. Montrealers have an issue.
Yes, that's a good point.
By the way, so I thought I heard this, I might be wrong this morning, about the city, so not Tourism Montreal, but the actual administration recognizing this fact. You don't want tourists to come here and look at a city and go, what the hell's going on? It's everything, cones every block. Is there a concerted effort being made that you're aware of to remove X number of cones just to get ready for the race so it doesn't look like that?
Yeah, they've done it this year. I wish they would have done it also the previous years as well, but they've made an effort. There's been a constant effort. Is that dramatically changed the landscape? No, I think we can do more than that, especially in the summer. So because the variable in terms of the temperature, it can't work. That's one of the few cities in Canada where you can't work during the winter, and that therefore we pay the price more in the summer. But there's been a conscious effort. That being said, when you go to Mexico City, you go to Paris, there's not as many orange cone as we have here. So it's a bit too many and overdone, and I wish that they can do the smaller cone and have a bit more discipline around it.
Does this administration now care, do you think, very much about this? Is this a hard sell for you to them?
No, it's not a hard sell. They acknowledge it, right? And the Grand Prix, they can't afford to not do well during the Grand Prix. So there's been a serious effort. Is that enough? I think that the visual pollution that we have for an international city needs to be rectified. It needs to be addressed in a very disciplined manner. So I agree with what you're saying and what you're not saying.
I think it's more of a planning issue. It's when you look at the issues that come up, you'll see them put up cones without any early warning and things like that. And I think that's what makes it frustrating, is because you don't know in advance, avoid this area, or you'll see it in front of the hotel, all of a sudden you can't get out of the car. Those are the types of things that we've experienced. They're getting much better at dealing with this stuff. We do have points of contact now. Initially, it was like, who do you call? But they are making a better effort in this regard. I agree with you.
Okay.
Do we overestimate the effects of winter, the polar climes that we have here in terms of bringing tourism? Is it Montrealers who think that, or do tourists feel that?
This is a really interesting thing. So a few years ago, we started going to Mexico on sales trips. And we've had a huge response from the Mexicans. I mean, Yves, I think, could talk about this too. But what's really interesting is when you talk to Mexicans, why do you come? We ask those questions, right? Why are you coming to Montreal in the winter? And they say, because I want to get to the cold. Yeah. And I think we just have to reframe how we sell winter. I think, we've always done a great job of selling summer. But if we reframe how we sell the winter, well, there are a lot of people in the world who'd be happy to come here.
Yeah, I would just add to this that, first, the summer is not ending on August 31st. For us, it's up to October 31st and sometime mid-November as well. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we've been investing in the winter scene. That being said, we're one of the few, again, in North America that lives a fourth season. And, despite that, we still have a occupancy rate of 71% on a yearly basis. So January being tough, right? It's around 50%. And the convention center is full because you got the auto car show and so on. So, it's probably as close to as best as we can do. But we can't forget September and October, which are very big months. And August is the highest month of the year, but tends to be booked really more last minute, as Andrew mentioned before. So it's a fourth season, and we've changed our positioning on the winter to say snowflakes are not the main actor of the scene, because Montreal tend to be, no snow, big snow. I mean, last year we decided not to put any snow in our hats, and it was lots of snow. So we decided to be a bit more flexible on how we sell the winter scene.
So if we could talk just around the race itself, which is on Sunday, what else is going on? Tourism Montreal promoting more than just the race. There's other events going on, like what, for example?
Well, we've got the Francos that are coming back. It's a big, very much big program this year. The jazz is coming right after. The Just for Laughs are coming. So this week is a very busy week, but the next few weeks as well. And there's going to be lots of stuff, whether it's Peel and Crescent and here at the Ritz and many of the hotels as well. So there are lots of party, and we want people to spend, especially people from outside of Montreal. And, that's 70% of the crowd that are coming outside. So, we're set for a great week. Pilots have arrived, I think, on Monday. So for us, it's the start of the year. Next year, it's going to be May 24th. Even earlier, so it's going to kick off the summer season even earlier for us, and that's good news for us.
We have a slogan telling people who are coming here for the first time. You see so many tourists to simply say hello or bonjour, I think a campaign for that might be kind of fun.
Well, we do bonjour. We've done the taxi. Bonjour is on the taxi is on many of the attractions that we've done. We continue to do that, which you don't see in many cities. You've got a welcome right at the airport. All of the taxi needs to be bonjour. So it starts at the airport, the experience. I think we have one of the good, a good framework to say to people, you're welcome to Montreal. We're there. Andrew said it as well in terms of Canada. Everybody is set together. Let's welcome Americans, but let's not forget about Europeans and Canadians, because Canadians will travel more than ever this year into Canada.
You've mentioned to me in the past, actually, that while Montrealers might think one way, you get very little negative feedback about language issues. Like tourists very rarely complain about like Americans having to speak or not.
Bill, it's a really important point, because we hear this all the time. Americans, whatever country you come from, you hear constantly how friendly we are in Montreal. Okay. So, somebody said to me the other day in the lobby, I was opening a map and somebody stopped and said, "Can I help you with how to get to?" And I just think we do have that culture. We probably are very negative on ourselves, but in our research of our own customers that are coming here, most people just think we're a fantastic city from a personality point of view.
People say, we don't visit Montreal. You live Montreal when you're there, because you're part of the teams and so on. And sometimes we tend to be Montrealers are tougher on themselves than our tourism or visitor. Actually, we call them visitors, and therefore, our satisfaction level are 93%. So people like us. And I always say to media, talk to the tourists. Don't talk to me, talk to the tourists.
But it's like road construction. Montrealers are much more sensitive to it, and some Montrealers much more sensitive to language than our tourists. I've never heard a tourist come up and say the same thing. We've done a lot of.
Are tourists aware there's a French factor here for the most part? Are they surprised?
Absolutely. I think they come here for this. They come for the fact that they've heard about the French factor. Okay. I think, though, they're surprised when they realize how easily they get around. So you do see it sometimes that there's a bit of doubt, and they come in and they just see this multilingual culture, with that francophone feel and the francophone effect on the city. It's just so phenomenal, and that's why people come back. They come once, and then you see them 5 years in a row.
Paris of North America.
Yeah.
Well, my tagline is actually Paris without the jet lag when we do sales.
Well, we tend to underestimate the international field of Montreal. Next year is going to be 50 years of the Olympic, But when you talk about cuisine, and I know you like that aspect, of Montreal, is 57 different variety of cuisine. You don't get this in many other countries, even in Europe, right? So, we tend to forget 156, routes that we have. We're plugged into many of the other odd destinations in the world. And we speak many languages, as we said, in Canada and even North America. So very unique in terms of feel.
It's getting a lot of optimism here. This is good.
That's my job, right? I've got to be, I say I'm constructive, right? There's things that we need to fix as a city.
Don't say constructive.
Right? Not constructive. Constructive, yes.
Yeah, I think we just have to get that word out that we are such a phenomenal city. And the more we do that, and every trip I go on, that's what you try to do. And I think it's paid in spades. I think the last few years have just been phenomenal for tourism since COVID. We're one of those places that people want to go, and we just have to make people realize that we're on the map.
And we've got to be, we've got a good climate, overall. And when you look at Quebec, it's a moderate climate. When you look at Europe, people tend to say, okay, I'm not sure that there's a lot of tourists, a lot of visitors. Also, it's very hot, in many of the cities in Europe. So a lot of people are starting to choose now to go into Canada, because Canada also is a great visitor country, not only Montreal, but we work together, and Andrew knows this better than anyone, as being part of the board of destination Canada. But also a few words on the Ritz. Ritz has been just a great player for Montreal as it relates to the Grand Prix for many years. You said it before, but even in Canada, when you look at it in terms of hosting big events. So last year we had the President's Cup. We had the Nations as well, for Cup Nation this year, which was a big success. So people, again, we forget about the international field of Montreal, inspire.
Well, we're going to look forward to Grand Prix weekend. I want to thank you both, Yves Lalumière, Andrew Torriani, and let's hope everything goes according to plan for this weekend, so we can look back on this next year and go, it was a great weekend, it was a great race, and it's not going anywhere. Thank you both.
Thank you.
That wraps up another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast, this time from the beautiful Ritz-Carlton Hotel. We'll see you again soon.